Buffalo's economic transformations show why this Rust Belt city's modern recovery feels smaller than its industrial might, even when the numbers say it is working. Buffalo, New York, lost more than half its population between 1950 and 2000. That was the fourth largest population decline among major American cities. But that statistic only tells part of the story. What really collapsed was not just the number of people. It was an entire economic ecosystem built around steel, shipping, and manufacturing that once made Buffalo the 15th largest city in America. Today, Buffalo is experiencing what officials call a renaissance. The Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus employs over 17,000 people. Kaleida Health, the region's largest healthcare provider, has 11,000 employees across its network. The university system generates $3.2 billion in economic impact. Governor Cuomo's Buffalo Billion program brought Tesla to town for renewable energy manufacturing. The 2020 census even showed Buffalo's first population gain in 70 years, a 6.5% increase that reversed decades of decline. So why does this comeback feel smaller than what came before? Why do longtime residents talk about the good old days when the steel plants were running? The answer lies not just in the numbers, but in understanding what kind of economy Buffalo lost and what kind it is trying to build back. Urban economist Edward Glaser calls this the Great Inversion, from manufacturing cities to knowledge economies. Let's start with what Buffalo used to be. In 1950, when the city reached its population peak of 580,132, 80% of area jobs were in manufacturing. At the heart of this was Bethlehem Steel's Lackawanna plant, at its height, the world's largest steel factory. During World War II, this single facility employed over 20,000 workers on a 1,300-acre site. Republic Steel added another 2,500 employees. U.S. Steel also operated regional facilities. When you factor in all the supporting industries, transportation, suppliers, and local businesses that served these workers, steel-related employment easily exceeded 30,000 people. These weren't just jobs. They were careers that built the American middle class through what economists call the economic multiplier effect. Don Williams, a former Bethlehem Steel employee who now works at the Steel Plant Museum, puts it this way. When you went in the front door and came out after 10 hours, you felt like you created something. Stuff came out of the ground and you made steel out of it. That steel went into the Empire State Building, the Golden Gate Bridge, Madison Square Garden, and the George Washington Bridge. Buffalo Steel literally helped build America. The workers who made this steel lived in neighborhoods like South Buffalo and Lackawanna, melting pots of Irish, Polish, Italian, and African American communities. Steelworkers' wages fueled a vibrant local economy through strong economic multiplier effects. These were high-wage union jobs that supported middle-class families without requiring college degrees. The money stayed local. Workers lived in company towns, shopped on Main Street, and sent their kids to neighborhood schools. But Buffalo's advantages went beyond just steel. The city sat at a crucial geographic crossroads, where the Great Lakes met the Erie Canal, where shipping from the Midwest connected to rail lines heading east. The Lackawanna Iron and Steel Company moved to Buffalo in 1899 specifically for this strategic location, drawn by easy access to Great Lakes shipping and numerous rail lines. Buffalo earned the nickname City of Light for its early adoption of electricity, powered by nearby Niagara Falls. This wasn't just an integrated industrial economy, it was an integrated economic ecosystem where each piece reinforced the others, a system that Brookings Institution research calls anchor institution networks. Then it all came apart. The decline started slowly in the 1960s. The St. Lawrence Seaway opened in 1959, reducing Buffalo's importance as a shipping hub. Foreign steel imports began flooding American markets through import substitution policies. By 1965, for the first time, more than 10 million tons of foreign steel entered the United States. Bethlehem Steel's Lackawanna plant, which had employed 20,000 workers in 1965, saw its workforce cut to 8,500 by 1977 as production shifted and demand decreased. But the real catastrophe came in 1982. On June 25th, Bethlehem Steel announced it would close the Lackawanna facility and lay off its remaining 10,000 workers over 6 weeks. By October 15th, most operations had stopped. More than 6,000 workers lost their jobs on the final day, most of them high-paying positions that had supported entire families. The ripple effects were devastating. In Lackawanna, the amount of taxes paid by Bethlehem Steel fell from 66% of the city's revenue to just 8%. The city's 22,700 residents faced massive tax increases just to maintain basic services. Entire neighborhoods emptied out as families left to find work elsewhere. The 1970s alone saw Buffalo lose 104,898 residents, a 22.7% population drop in a single decade. By 2000, Buffalo had lost approximately half its population from its 1950 peak. What remained was a city struggling to redefine itself in a post-industrial economy, joining other Rust Belt cities like Cleveland and Detroit in what researchers call de-industrialization. Enter the new Buffalo. The story of Buffalo's recovery begins in 2001 with the founding of the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, University at Buffalo School of Medicine, Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center, and other institutions formed a consortium to create a concentrated medical district downtown. The idea was simple. If Buffalo could not compete in manufacturing anymore, it could build a new economy around what economists call EDs and MedZs, education and medical services. Richard Florida's research on the creative class suggested that cities could reinvent themselves around knowledge workers and anchor institutions. The results, by many measures, have been impressive. The Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus now employs over 17,000 people. Kaleida Health has become a major economic anchor, with 11,000 employees across its network of hospitals and clinics. Buffalo area colleges and universities, including the University at Buffalo and SUNY Polytechnic Institute, have 110,000 students and 32,000 employees, creating that $3.2 billion economic impact. Then came the Buffalo Billion. In 2012, Governor Andrew Cuomo announced a massive state investment program aimed at transforming Buffalo's economy, administered through Empire State Development. The centerpiece was a deal with Tesla to build what would become known as Gigafactory New York, a large solar panel manufacturing facility designed to create green jobs in the clean energy economy. The state invested nearly $1 billion to build the factory and lease it to Tesla for just $1 per year. The promise was enormous. Elon Musk said the factory would make enough solar panels to cover 1,000 roofs per week by 2020. The facility was expected to employ thousands in advanced manufacturing. Buffalo would become a hub for clean energy production and renewable energy manufacturing. These initiatives achieved something remarkable. They stabilized Buffalo's population decline and even reversed it. The 2020 census showed a 6.5% population gain, the first increase since 1950. Downtown Buffalo has seen new investment, with projects like the $254 million Commodore Perry redevelopment bringing 405 modern, affordable apartments to the city. The Buffalo Bills and Buffalo Sabres continue to anchor civic identity and regional economic activity. But here is where the comeback feels smaller than the original. Let's look at the numbers more closely. The Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus employs 17,000 people. Impressive, but still fewer than the single Bethlehem Steel plant employed at its peak. Unlike the steel plant, which was one massive employer providing similar high-wage jobs, the medical campus represents dozens of different institutions with widely varying pay scales. Many of the jobs are in healthcare support services, with median incomes well below what steel workers earned. The Tesla factory. It has been a disappointment by almost every measure. The plant now averages 21 solar roof installations per week, far from the 1,000 installations Elon Musk promised. Many of the factory jobs pay around $16 per hour, a fraction of what steelworkers earned in inflation-adjusted dollars. An audit found that the state's return on investment was just 54 cents for every dollar of public money spent, far below the benchmark of $30 in economic benefit per dollar invested. The state's investment amounted to more than $500,000 per job created. Even the positive statistics reveal the challenge Buffalo faces. The city's median household income is $48,050, well below the national median of $64,994. One-third of the local workforce is in service jobs with median income below $26,000. The poverty rate stands at 25.96%. Over 40% of the city's youth live in poverty. This points to a fundamental difference between Buffalo's old economy and its new one. The steel economy created what economists call middle-skill, high-wage jobs. You could graduate from high school, get hired at the plant, and earn enough to buy a house, support a family, and build wealth over a career. The Steelworkers Union negotiated benefits, job security, and regular wage increases. The new economy is increasingly bifurcated. On one end are highly educated professionals, doctors, researchers, and university administrators who earn good salaries. On the other end are service workers, hospital aides, cafeteria staff, and security guards who earn much less. The middle has largely disappeared, despite anchor institution theory suggesting that EDs and meds could provide broad-based employment. There is also a geographic dimension to this change. Steelworkers lived in Buffalo proper, in neighborhoods near the plants. Their paychecks supported local businesses, local schools, and the local tax base through strong economic multiplier effects. Many of today's high-earning medical and university professionals live in the suburbs, taking their spending power and tax contributions outside the city limits, reducing the economic multiplier effect. The Buffalo Billion program has been plagued by scandal. The president of SUNY Polytechnic Institute, Elaine Caloyeros, was convicted of rigging bids for the Tesla project. Developer Louis Simonelli was also convicted in the bid rigging scheme. The whole program has faced criticism as the single biggest economic development boondoggle in American history. Critics argue that Buffalo's problem is not just economic, it is educational. As one analysis noted, the share of the population possessing college degrees in the 1970s is the best predictor of which northeastern and midwestern cities have done well since then. Buffalo was not a particularly skilled city in 1970, and it is not one now. The EDs and meds economy requires different skills than the manufacturing economy that came before. Yet Buffalo's leaders argue the city had no choice but to reinvent itself. Rich Azzopardi, a former Cuomo spokesperson, defended the Tesla project, saying this particular project turned a radioactive brownfield into a plant that has employed thousands of people in what has been one of the hardest-hit economic regions of New York for years. And there are signs of continued progress. Western New York received a federal grant of $25 million to invest in advanced manufacturing on Buffalo's east side. Governor Kathy Hochul announced $10 million for commercial and mixed-use projects in the same area. Manufacturing still employs over 66,000 people in the region and generates $6.3 billion in gross regional product. The Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority continues to support regional economic development. But the numbers tell the story of why the comeback feels smaller. Buffalo today employs thousands in healthcare and education, but that employment is spread across dozens of institutions and employers. The economic impact is real, but diffused. The steel economy, by contrast, was concentrated and massive, single employers providing thousands of similar high-wage jobs that anchored entire communities. There is something else at play here, the economic multiplier effect. When a steel worker spent his paycheck at the local diner or hardware store, that money stayed in the community and got spent again. Today's economy is more complex and globalized. Hospital profits might flow to insurance companies based elsewhere. University research grants come from federal agencies. The money does not cycle through the local economy in the same way. The psychological impact matters too. Steel was tangible. You could see the product, touch it, know that your work built bridges and skyscrapers. The service economy is less visible, more abstract. A hospital aide or university security guard might struggle to see how their job connects to something larger. Buffalo's story is not unique among Rust Belt cities. Cities like Cleveland and Detroit have faced similar challenges transitioning from manufacturing to service economies. Some, like Pittsburgh, have been more successful in attracting high-tech industries and educated workers, creating what Richard Florida calls creative class economies. Others continue to struggle with population loss and economic decline. What makes Buffalo's case interesting is that the recovery is real, but incomplete. The city has stopped the bleeding, population is growing again, downtown is seeing investment, major institutions are thriving. But the new economy has not replicated the broad-based prosperity of the old one. Looking forward, Buffalo faces continued challenges. The Tesla factory remains controversial, with the state renegotiating lease terms and reducing employment requirements. Downtown office and hotel development has slowed dramatically. The COVID pandemic highlighted vulnerabilities in healthcare-dependent economies. But there are reasons for optimism, too. Buffalo's location advantages have not disappeared. It is still a gateway between the United States and Canada. It still has access to abundant fresh water and clean energy from Niagara Falls. The university system continues to grow and attract research funding. The medical campus represents real expertise in healthcare and biotechnology. The clean energy economy and renewable energy manufacturing sectors continue to develop. Perhaps most importantly, Buffalo has learned to be more realistic about economic development. The Buffalo Billion taught hard lessons about the limits of state-directed investment and the importance of due diligence. Current development efforts focus more on supporting existing anchor institutions and entrepreneurs rather than trying to lure massive outside employers. The story of Buffalo's transition from steel and shipping to the education and medical sectors is not really about whether the comeback is smaller than the original. It is about whether a 21st century service economy can provide the same opportunities for broad-based prosperity that a 20th century manufacturing economy did. Buffalo is still writing that story. The city that once made steel for America's greatest buildings is now treating cancer patients and training the next generation of doctors and researchers. It is different work, requiring different skills, creating different kinds of communities. Whether it will prove as lasting and broadly beneficial as what came before remains to be seen. But for now, Buffalo endures, smaller than it once was, but no longer shrinking. Changed, but not defeated. The comeback may feel smaller than the old engine, but it is a comeback nonetheless.